Coming up on this Thursday edition of Newsline at noon, in an unprecedented congressional move, the House of Representatives passes a bill urging the U.S. Secretary of State to put pressure on Japan to apologize for its wartime crimes, including sexual slavery. President back in India for a state visit is confident her talks with the Indian Prime Minister will lead to substantive results in boosting trade and promoting corporate tie-ups between the two nations. Plus, after years in a slump, Korean shipyards are poised to profit from a recovery in the shipping industry and growing demand for fuel-efficient vessels, oil rigs, and other offshore plants. These stories and more on Newsline at noon. Thanks for joining us. You're watching Newsline at noon. I'm Choi Yu-sun in Seoul.
Very good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broom. The U.S. House of Representatives has passed a bill addressing the issue of comfort women, those women forced into sexual slavery by the Japanese army during the Second World War.
And this is the first time the matter has been included in a U.S. congressional bill, and it's expected to increase pressure on the Japanese government to confront its wartime history. Our Hwang Sung-hee has the details.
U.S. lawmakers are formally calling on their government to pay more attention to the so-called comfort women, or women forced into sexual slavery by the Japanese military during the Second World War. In a document attached to a spending bill for 2014, the U.S. House of Representatives makes note of a 2007 resolution on the comfort women issue and urges the Secretary of State to encourage the government of Japan to address the issues raised in the resolution. The 2007 resolution calls on the Japanese government to issue an official apology for its wartime sexual enslavement of women. An estimated 200,000 females, mostly Korean, were used as sex slaves by the Japanese army in the early 20th century, and many are still waiting for an apology from Tokyo, although time is running out for the aging victims. The bill passed on Wednesday is not legally binding, but is highly symbolic of Washington's efforts to address the matter. It marks the first time the comfort women issue has been included in U.S. legislation and is sure to ramp up pressure on the Japanese government. The Senate is expected to vote on the spending bill sometime this week, and if passed, it will be sent to the White House for President Barack Obama's signature. The bill comes amid increasing criticism from U.S. lawmakers towards Japan, following Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's controversial visit to the disputed Yasukuni War Shrine late last year. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
A U.S. Senate committee has approved a bill to extend the current U.S.-Korea civilian nuclear accord for another 2 years. The current agreement bans Korea from enriching uranium and reprocessing spent nuclear fuel amid concerns about proliferation on the peninsula. Seoul is seeking to revise the agreement to allow it to do both in order to reduce nuclear waste and meet an increasing demand for energy. But Washington has been reluctant, and the two countries have thus far been unable to find common ground. The 2-year extension would give the two sides more time to seek resolution on the matter. The current agreement is scheduled to expire in March, but if the bill is approved by the full Senate and House, it would give the green light to President Barack Obama to extend the end date to March of 2016. And moving on to President Park Geun-hye's state visit to India. The president got straight to work upon her arrival in New Delhi Wednesday, meeting with Koreans living in the country. Our presidential correspondent Oh Jin-ju, who's traveling with the president, sent us this report.
President Park's first official schedule in New Delhi was meeting with Korean residents living in the South Asian country. The president said there are a lot of fields in which Korea and India could create synergy through cooperation, as the two countries both have unique cultural heritage and are leading nations in advanced science and technology. In particular, she emphasized the role of the Korean community in India should play.
양국이 협력을 확대해 나가는 과정에서 가장 큰 역할을 해 주셔야 할 분들이 동포 여러분이고 또 그 발전의 과실을 가장 크게 누리실 분들도 바로 여러분이라고 생각합니다.
President Park pledged to actively push ahead with her sales diplomacy during her stay in India to reduce the difficulties Korean firms face when doing business in the nation, with India having many restraints on foreign investment. Addressing the request made by the residents, she promised to do her best to provide the necessary government support in setting up international schools for Korean children in India, as educational costs in other international schools are very high. She vowed to make sure that the government devised various measures to support the spread of the Korean wave or Hallyu in the South Asian country, as culture is the best way for people from different countries to communicate with each other. President Park is scheduled to hold bilateral talks with Indian Prime Minister Manmohan Singh on Thursday, where they'll discuss developing the two countries' cooperation in a variety of fields, ranging from economic affairs to science and information technology. Oh Jin-ju, Arirang News, New Delhi.
North Korea has warned South Korea it could spark a nuclear war if annual South Korea-US defense drills begin as scheduled late next month. Pyongyang's committee that handles inter-Korean affairs says a failure to cancel the military exercises would not only damage inter-Korean relations but could lead to a terrible disaster on the Korean peninsula. Such strong rhetoric out of Pyongyang is an annual occurrence at this time of year, as it considers the Key Resolve and Foal Eagle drills as a provocation. Seoul and Washington have long said the annual exercises are strictly defensive in nature. South Korea posted economic growth slower than all but one other emerging Asian nation in 2013. The Finance Ministry and the Korea Center for International Finance says Korea's growth rate last year is expected to stand at 2.8%. Only Taiwan recorded lower growth at 2%. China topped the list at 7.7%, followed by the Philippines and Indonesia. Forecasts for this year don't look that great for Korea either. Projections point towards 3.8% growth in 2014, which would see Korea ranked 7th. Experts worry Korea is falling behind due to a decrease in facilities investment and the strengthening local currency. Korea's world-leading shipbuilding industry has been on a wild and quite unpredictable ride in recent years due to, in large part, the ongoing effects of the global financial crisis. The future is looking rosier, though, despite growing competition from China. In the penultimate part of our 5-part series on the nation's industrial outlook for 2014, our Song Ji-son tells us what to expect from Korea's shipbuilding sector.
The global shipbuilding industry is recovering from a long slump, and last year, Korea's major shipbuilders won more orders than they targeted. The big three, Samsung, Hyundai Heavy Industries, and Daewoo Shipbuilding and Marine Engineering, logged a combined total of $53 billion in orders, a 7-year high. When measured in terms of gross tonnage, the orders are nearly double from the previous year. 3 Northeast Asian nations of China, Korea, and Japan make up almost 90% of the world ship orders won, and China overtook Korea to become number 1 in 2007, taking advantage of massive ship orders placed by local ship operators and lower production costs. Korean shipbuilders now focus more on complex and expensive vessels, such as LNG carriers and drill ships, as they can no longer compete with their Chinese rivals in pricing. And the new year looks brighter for Korea's shipbuilders, since there are more offshore plant orders in the works.
What makes us busy these days are offshore plant orders that account for about half of total ship orders.
The LNG carrier orders are expected to rise this year, and the order of offshore plants are also continuously growing. We are anticipating robust growth at a similar level as last year.
Foreign firms are also flocking to Korea to learn from Korean shipbuilders. This corporation has moved its headquarters to Seoul district of Gangnam-gu to strengthen ties with Korea's leading shipbuilders.
Korea is at the center of the global offshore and marine industry, and that if we want to be number one, if we want to succeed as a global marine offshore business, we have to succeed in Korea first.
Industry analysts say Korean shipbuilders are now poised to benefit from a new global trend of requiring eco-friendly ships with better fuel efficiency and less emissions. 송지선, Arirang News.
Korea's Samsung Group says it will take a different approach to hiring new employees. The conglomerate is going to take experience into greater account and place less emphasis on certificates and licenses. Shin Se-min reports on how the changes will affect young job seekers.
This is where all new recruits to Samsung Group take a written test called the SSAT. Every year, over 200,000 people take the test, all of them hoping to get a shot at working for Korea's largest conglomerate by market value. Competition is so fierce that there are reference books and private education institutes that help people prepare for the test. But those come at a high cost. To reduce that social burden and streamline things, Samsung is now putting more of the emphasis during the hiring process on the applicants' resumes. The company is weeding out applicants they don't plan on hiring earlier on, requiring a smaller number of people to take the test. And there are other changes as well. Instead of giving points to people that study abroad, Samsung plans to put more weight on extracurricular activities and majors.
Instead of having irrelevant licenses, we are looking into the applicant's experiences and knowledge in the necessary fields.
And if a student receives a recommendation from a university president, the applicant will be exempt from the first round. The SSAT exam will also go through its own changes. Questions will be more logical and comprehensive starting this year. With the conglomerates changing the way it hires new employees, it's expected that other companies throughout the country will follow the suit. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
If you've ever been frustrated with foreign language translations of official Korean documents or websites, well, you're not alone, but you will be glad to hear that the National Assembly is fully taking the issue to task. Our Kim Hyun-ji has more on efforts to boost quality control of government agency translations.
More and more foreigners are visiting the websites of government agencies for information about Korea. But a majority leave with one complaint: a lack of consistency in the Korean translations and phonetic notations. Despite a growing demand for translations in the public sector, Korea does not yet have an organization tasked exclusively with providing official translations, nor is there an organization responsible for quality control. Because of this, government agencies usually find translators on their own, which lawmaker Kim Jang-sil says is a waste.
There is no standardization in place for organizing, producing, and assessing public translations. Under these circumstances, it's hard to expect high-quality translations. And because there are no follow-up measures, public translation material often get tossed out after they are produced. It's a waste of taxpayers' money.
Translations on government agency websites are poor in quality. For instance, Japanese words are used on the Chinese page of Korea's Justice Ministry website. In a forum held Wednesday at the National Assembly, translation and interpretation experts agreed that these issues merit greater attention. They propose a task force and then turning it into a full-fledged agency exclusively in charge of public sector translations. Creating a database for translations of professional terminology was also mentioned. The European Union, for instance, has the Directorate General for Translation, an agency that oversees the translations for the European Commission. Speakers at the forum encouraged the lawmakers who were present to refer to foreign models such as the one in the EU and develop a similar kind of translation agency to serve Korea's needs. The response from the lawmakers was positive, which hopefully means that the quality of Korea's public sector translations will soon improve. Kim Hyun-ji, Arirang News.
For your fill of Korean and international news, join Chae Yu-sun and Mark Broom every weekday at lunchtime. NEWSLINE at noon.
Plenary session this Wednesday and vote on the government restructuring bills.
UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon says about half of Syria's population, that's nearly 9.3 million people, urgently need humanitarian aid. Speaking at a donor conference in Kuwait on Wednesday, Ban appealed for $6.5 billion to help the millions of people suffering from starvation or disease. The UN had secured around $2.4 billion in pledges from Western and Gulf nations by the end of Wednesday. The donor conference comes 1 week before international peace talks on Syria kick off in Geneva. And in the most recent development in the war-torn country, at least 26 people were killed Wednesday when a car bomb exploded in the northern city of Jarablus. The Syria conflict is estimated to have killed more than 130,000 people and left more than 6 million homeless. Russia remains on a heightened state of alert just 3 weeks ahead of the Sochi Winter Olympics after a shootout between security forces and Islamist militants in the volatile Russian region of Dagestan killed 7 people. Russia's National Anti-Terrorism Committee says one of the dead gunmen was accused of detonating a car bomb last year, which killed 3 people. The predominantly Muslim village in which the gunfight took place is just 550 kilometers from Sochi, which will host the Olympics from February 7th to the 23rd. President Vladimir Putin has ordered the country's security forces to be on combat-ready alert after 2 back-to-back suicide bombings in December killed over 30 people in Volgograd. Despite the violence, Putin and the International Olympic Committee say they are confident the Games will run smoothly. The head of the International Monetary Fund has warned the global economic recovery runs the risk of falling foul to deflation. Speaking at the national press in Washington on Wednesday, Christine Lagarde said there was optimism in the air about growth, but the global recovery is still quite frail. She said deflation could prove disastrous for the recovery. Lagarde's comments come amid growing debate about whether deflation might take hold in the Eurozone, where inflation seems unable to reach the European Central Bank's target. Deflation worries economists as, among other things, people become less willing to spend and, in particular, less willing to borrow.
Apple has agreed to refund millions to parents who say their kids were allowed to make purchases in apps without their consent. Under the terms of a settlement reached with the U.S. Federal Trade Commission, the iPhone maker also agreed to change its billing practices to ensure it has the express consent of parents before charging for in-app spending. The FTC complaint charged that Apple failed to inform parents that entering a password for a single in-app purchase opened a 15-minute window during which unlimited purchases could be made without further authorization. Apple's App Store has many mobile applications and games offering virtual items such as currency, with prices ranging from 99 cents to just under $100 that users can purchase from within the app instead at the store. Now to something that will concern parents of young children. In a quirkily titled report on a very serious issue, Greenpeace says toxic monsters may be lurking in your children's closets. The environmental campaign group says some top fashion brands are using hazardous chemicals in kids' clothing. Our Kwon So-wa reports.
A little story about the monsters in your closet. The monsters Greenpeace is referring to are toxic substances found in some famous global clothing brands. The shocking revelations come after the organization tested 82 items of children's clothing and shoes from 12 well-known brands.
And unfortunately, we found products from each of those brands that contain highly hazardous chemicals that can, for instance, disrupt our hormone system.
More than half of the products contained more than 1 milligram per kilogram of nonylphenol ethoxylates, or NPEs, which can affect a child's hormone system. Those include clothing from CNA, Disney, and American Apparel. Burberry's garments also contained a high amount. PFCs, or perfluorinated compounds that can affect the reproduction and immune system, were also detected in all 15 tested products. Adidas, Nike, and Uniqlo had especially high concentrations. Experts say although the chemicals don't pose an immediate risk to adults, children are more vulnerable to those substances. The results showed no major difference between the level of toxic substances found in children's clothing and those in adult pieces. Greenpeace is calling on the world's top fashion brands to take more responsibility for the environment. The organization has made progress since 2011, when it launched its so-called detox campaign, which encourages global brands to stop using hazardous chemicals in their products by 2020. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
The annual Korea Image Awards were held Wednesday night, dishing out honors to people and products that help promote Korea to the world. Our Connie Lee tells us who took home the top honors.
The Samsung Galaxy series of smartphones took the top honors at the 2014 Korea Image Awards Wednesday night.
Samsung has more responsibility to continue to develop and introduce innovative products and also high-quality products to the world. Thank you very much.
The smartphone received the Stepping Stone Award for its role in helping Korea gain recognition as an IT powerhouse. The annual awards ceremony, hosted by Korea Image Communication Institute, celebrates all things Korean and recognizes products, individuals, and groups that help promote Korea abroad.
This year is special because for the first time we are giving out the Flower Stone Award. It goes to jazz vocalist Na Yoon-sun, who uses her voice to communicate with the world.
And captivating the audience was Na Yoon-sun's jazz rendition of Korea's traditional folk song, Arirang. Her smooth vocal skills showed why she's worthy of sellout concerts in Europe.
It's such an honor to receive this award. I am known as a Korean jazz vocalist when I travel the world, so I feel the responsibility to represent Korea well.
Korean-born French minister delegate Fleur Peregrine also received an award via video for her contributions to French-Korean relations. The event brought together a total of 600 guests, including ambassadors and different cultural experts from all over the world. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
Time now to get an update on the weather with our Lee Ji-yeon at the Weather Center. Hello there, Ji-yeon.
Good afternoon, Mark and Yusan. Well, I've got some good news and some bad news about the weather today. Can you guys guess what it is?
Well, I think I can. I think the weather is a bit milder today, a couple of degrees higher. And the bad news is there does seem to be a bit of a yellow tint in the sky, so I'm guessing there's a moderate amount of dust particles today.
Right, you've got that right, Mark. Temperatures will be about 2 to 3 degrees higher than yesterday, which is good news for most of us. And the bad news is that the high level of fine dust particles in the air. So it could be higher than other regions except Jeju Island, so try not to be outdoor for too long and wash your hands and drink plenty of water to stay hydrated because the air quality is quite dry too. We've been getting lots of reports of fires and related accidents, so please take extra care when handling fires and heaters. Now, the weather tomorrow should be similar to today. We'll have a chilly morning that will turn into a mild afternoon, and hopefully the level of those particles will get back to the normal so we can take advantage of nice weather. But I'll be sure to give you an update on that tomorrow morning. And it looks like the mild condition will continue this week. Still, temperatures will drop a little bit day by day until early next week, when we'll see a more dramatic drop and another cold snap. With that in mind, here are the readings for today. Behind Seoul and Daegu will get up to 4 and 7 respectively, while Gwangju make it to 6 and Busan should top out at 8. Now, for other regions, it looks like Jeju will climb to 8 in the afternoon. Daejeon will get up to 5, while the top temperature on Kumgangsan Mountain will be at -1. Now, that's all for me today, and back to Mark and Yusan in the studio.
Thank you very much, Jiyeon. And that's about it for now. Those are the stories we're following at this hour.
And thank you, and join us again tomorrow at noon.